I think we'll start. Let me turn my cell phone off, so I think we're ready to go. Good afternoon. My name is Jackie Gillen, and I am president of Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. Before we start our press conference, I wanted to take a moment to recognize the families of those that were killed and injured in the Philadelphia Amtrak crash last night. Our thoughts and prayers are with all of you. We all rely on our nation's transportation infrastructure to get us where we need to go, whether it's to work or to school or for leisure travel. When there is a train crash or a car crash or a plane crash or a truck crash where lives are needlessly lost, we look to our elected and government officials to ensure our safety and the safety of our families, whether we choose to travel on train tracks, in the air, or on our roads and highways. And when a crash occurs, resulting in deaths and injuries and devastation, we want to know the reason why. And we want our officials to act. No, we expect our officials to act. We expect our elected officials in Congress to look at ways to advance the safety of all of us, no matter what mode of transportation that we take. Just moments ago, before I stepped up to the podium, we just found out that the House Appropriations Committee defeated an amendment offered by Representative David Price on a party line vote of 31 to 20. His amendment would have stripped all of these anti-truck safety provisions that we're here to talk about today from the bill. I was hoping that we would be able to say, well, thank you, House, you got rid of these provisions, but it didn't turn out that way. Every day of the year, 10 people die in large truck crashes and 270 more are injured. We're here today because we have members of Congress who are pushing enactment of several provisions which will weaken or gut current truck safety laws. If enacted, these measures will make our highways less safe and will surely result in more people being killed in truck crashes. Our message to those members today are stop pandering to the trucking industry and start putting the public safety as your #1 priority. Again, stop pandering to this industry and look at how you can advance public safety. This morning, you're going to hear from all of the stakeholders that are involved in truck safety: truck crash victims and their families, safety groups, law enforcement, and labor, urging Congress to stop advancing this unsafe agenda. If they succeed, we will see overweight and oversized trucks on our highways being driven by overworked and overtired truckers. And that is a recipe for disaster. The House bill includes a provision to allow FedEx and other companies to force every state in this country to allow extra long, dangerous trucks pulling twin 33-foot trailers. This is a trailer that will be the size of an 8-story office building. Another provision will dramatically increase the weekly working and driving hours of truck drivers by taking away their weekend off, allowing them to work 82 hours a week. This change was championed by Senator Susan Collins in the last DOT spending bill, and now we see it's reared its ugly head again. There are also truck size and weight exemptions for specific states. And finally, trucking interests are trying to stop an ongoing public rulemaking that's being done by the Department of Transportation to review and determine if insurance requirements for trucking companies and motor coach companies carrying passengers are sufficient. They haven't made a decision, they're just doing an open rulemaking, and there's a provision in the bill to shut that rulemaking down. Let me now introduce our first speaker, Captain Robert Kinnear, who is from Fair Lawn, New Jersey. He's with the police department there, and he serves as commander of the New Jersey Honor Guard. He is accompanied today, and we welcome both of them, Detective Reverend David Boone, who is also a member of the Fair Lawn Police Department. They're here in Washington, D.C. for National Police Week. Sadly, a fellow New Jersey police officer, Officer Chris Goodell of Warwick, Waldwick, New Jersey Police Department was killed on July 17, 2014, when the unmarked police car that he was sitting in and enforcing speed laws was plowed over by a truck, which made absolutely no evasive maneuver to avoid the crash. Today, the names of 5 brave New Jersey police officers, including Officer Chris Goodell, will be added to the wall at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. We are so pleased to welcome you. We are so sad to hear about the death of your colleague, and we're so appreciative for you to take time from this important week to be with us today. Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank the opportunity to get a chance to speak here today. I am Captain Robert Kinnear. I'm a 42-year veteran of the Fair Lawn Police Department and commander of the New Jersey State Honor Guard. In my line of duty, I've worked many crash scenes in my 42 years and have seen firsthand the catastrophic destruction that occurs when an 80,000-pound truck collides with a passenger vehicle, as you can see here. The car occupants are almost always the losers. Truck driver fatigue is a known killer, and yet as I speak to you, members of Congress are poised to make this problem worse by forcing truck drivers to work and drive even longer hours and take away their weekend off. Congress is also prepared to increase the size and weight of trucks on our roadways. If Congress does not make an immediate course change, more families, as you can see here today, will be put in the path of bigger, heavier trucks being driven by fatigued and tired truck drivers. As you know, this is National Police Week. Officers from around the country will honor fallen officers lost in the line of duty during the previous year. The names of fallen officers added to the National Law Enforcement Memorial walls include many who have lost their lives in traffic-related accidents. In the past 10 years, that number is close to 600 law enforcement officers. I urge Congress to stop these truck safety rollbacks. We owe it to the memory of those officers who gave the supreme sacrifice, and thousands of police officers who risk their lives every day, every second, every minute, and every year, enforcing traffic safety laws in high-speed and dangerous situations to keep our streets and roads safer for everyone. And we owe it to the 4,000 people who are killed every year in preventable truck crashes. The needless fatalities must stop, and this assault on truck safety must be defeated. I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much. I can talk a lot about these numbing and staggering statistics on the number of people killed every year in truck crashes, but I think it's really important to hear from someone who has actually lived through the loss of loved ones because of a truck crash. FedEx, who is trying to get these extra long trucks, have been trying to assure us, don't worry, be happy, life will be good with these bigger trucks, and in fact that is not the case. They are very dangerous and do not belong on our roads. Lisa Schrum lost her mother and her stepfather in a crash. She is from Fayette, Missouri. The crash involved a FedEx truck, and she is here today with her stepmother, Lili Vianello, and we're so grateful for your traveling here to share your views on this issue. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Schrum. I never imagined I would be here today in the United States Senate, so far from my hometown of Fayette, Missouri. But I'm here to share my story, one I wouldn't wish on any family. This past Sunday was Mother's Day, but I wasn't able to tell my mom how much I loved her and how much she meant to me. My mother, Virginia, died on October 10th, 2006, in a devastating crash that also killed her husband, Randy. They were driving home to Pleasant Hill, Missouri, after dropping off a car in Fayette for my younger brother. They were traveling on Interstate 70 shortly after 11 p.m. Driving conditions were not ideal, but then they rarely are when you're on a heavily traveled highway with cars and big trucks moving at high speeds. They had just crested a hill. There was a crash ahead on the road and visibility was poor. In addition, a FedEx double-trailer truck had swerved into the left-hand shoulder to avoid the upcoming crash. Because of the sheer length of the FedEx truck's two trailers, the back end of the second trailer extended into the passing lane of traffic. Mom's vehicle hit the double trailer sticking out into the lane ahead of her, spun out, and was then struck by another tractor trailer which sliced her vehicle in half. Both Mom and Randy were killed. There was a third fatality that day, a young father and husband, and there were 10 people injured in this multi-vehicle crash. When I think about the crash and hear about lobbying efforts by FedEx and others to make trucks even longer and heavier, I cringe. I cringe to think about how much worse it would have been, how many more cars would have been hit, and how many more people would have been killed if longer, heavier trucks were involved. That day, a void was created in my life and my family's life that can never be filled. My brothers and I lost our mom and stepdad. My son Malachi, who was only 18 months old at the time, will never know his grandmother and Randy except in photos. My mom was an avid horse enthusiast. Her grandson will never get to enjoy with her that pony ride she had planned for him. My brother Harrison, who was only 18 at the time of the crash, missed getting to dance with his mom at his wedding. He's longed for her advice on raising his baby girl Haley, who will never meet her. Each milestone that passes every Mother's Day, every birthday, every holiday, really every single day, good or bad, reminds us that our mother was tragically taken from us. It's a void that will never be filled. I'm here today to honor my loving mom and Randy. But I'm also here to speak out against the current legislation under consideration in Congress. By furthering the legislative agenda of the trucking interest, by allowing trucks to become even longer and heavier, not to mention driven by tired truckers, our highways will become even more dangerous, even more lethal. The crash that killed Mom and Randy was horrific. There's no safety technology that could have protected them from a twin trailer. The result on their pickup, as you can see in these two photos, was complete obliteration. It's hard to recognize what the vehicle must have looked like before the crash. Only Randy's Army dad license plate is still discernible. Even in death, he was able to tell his son, Jesse, how proud he was of him. You know, everyone here thinks it can't happen to me. But trust me, it does happen to families every day. And it will only worsen with increased frequency and enhanced tragedy if FedEx and others have their way. I'm a middle school math teacher, and I want to help FedEx and their supporters in Congress with some numbers. Over the last 2 years, there have been approximately 90 people killed and more than 1,250 injured in FedEx truck crashes. When we look at all accidents involving large trucks, the numbers are even worse. Every year, 4,000 people are needlessly killed and 100,000 more are injured on our nation's highways in crashes involving large trucks. 96% of people killed in a crash involving a large truck and a car are in the passenger vehicle. Double tractor trailers have an 11% higher fatal crash rate than single trailers. Is it really so important that FedEx be allowed to carry more packages when it means more oversized trucks on our streets and highways? Is it really so important for FedEx and other trucking companies to increase their profits? Congress, I plead with you, do not put profits ahead of public safety. I know what's important, and I pray Congress is listening. Having our mom here for Mother's Day and having her around to share your life, that's what's important. Letting a grandson know the joys of having his grandma, that's what's important. Allowing longer, heavier trucks will equate to more safety risks, more injuries, and more deaths. Allowing longer, heavier trucks will mean more families like mine spending more holidays without a parent, child, sibling, or close friend. I urge Congress to say no to FedEx and all the other trucking interests. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Lily, for sharing that story with us. Not only do safety groups, law enforcement, and the families of truck crash victims oppose making our highways more dangerous with these oversized, overweight trucks being driven by overtired truckers, but the truck drivers themselves, who actually have to get behind the wheel and try to drive and maneuver these trucks in traffic, adverse weather conditions, are also opposed to what Congress is trying to do. And we welcome Lamont Bird here today. He is Director of the Department of Safety and Health for the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, a position he has held since 1995. We're grateful to have you here today to support this. The Teamsters have been terrific allies and friends in trying to make our highways safer, and we really welcome you today. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. I'm pleased to be here today representing our General President, Jim Hoffa. As many of you know, he's participated in many of these press conferences supporting the current limits on truck size and weight and advocating for a strong hours of service regulation. He would be here today except for the fact that he is attending events related to the Teamsters Annual Unity Conference. So I join you today, along with other safety-minded groups and these brave families who have suffered such personal loss, to lend the Teamsters' voice in denouncing the rollback of critical safety measures through the actions of the House Appropriations Committee and call upon the Senate to not go down the same dangerous path. Over 600,000 of our 1.4 million members start their workday by turning the key in a vehicle. And whether they drive a school bus, a UPS van, or an 18-wheeler, our nation's highways and local roads serve as their workplace. So as a union representing these drivers, I want to address two troubling issues that may have a profound effect on highway safety, as truck size and weight and the time drivers spend behind the wheel. From a driver perspective, our roads are congested like never before. We all know how it is to drive in heavy traffic. It wears on you. It's stressful. It's tiring. Yet there are those who try to make the argument that longer and heavier trucks will make our highways safer. But those arguments are tragically flawed. There is no justification for increasing a 28-foot double trailer to 33 feet, unless, that is, you take seriously a report written by the trucking industry that is supporting such a change. These longer configurations mean greater stopping distances, Our merging lanes on our highways are not designed for these longer, heavier trucks to get up to the speed they need to achieve to safely merge. And most of our off-ramps are not designed to accommodate these longer configurations. That can be evidenced by just taking a look at the scuff marks on the Jersey walls. Proponents of heavier and longer trucks say that increasing the lengths and the weights of trucks will mean fewer trucks on our highways. We know that that's not true. Historically, every time that there's been an increase in truck size and weight, truck traffic has actually increased. Why does this happen? Because when you put more cargo on a truck, it becomes cheaper to ship by truck than by rail or other modes of transportation. It's simple economics. One might wonder why the Teamsters Union wouldn't support longer, heavier trucks if it meant more trucks on the road and potentially more drivers and Teamster members. Well, even if that were true, it's not about jobs, it's about safety. It's about ensuring the safety of our drivers and ensuring that they have a safe workplace that is as safe as any workplace that your typical factory worker may encounter. It's also about protecting our existing infrastructure, much of which is in serious disrepair. Adding a sixth axle to a commercial motor vehicle, if it's deployed properly, can mitigate some of the potential damage to our highways, but 97,000 pounds on a bridge is still 97,000 pounds on a bridge. And with half of our bridges being more than 40 years old, and 1 in 4 being structurally deficient or functionally obsolete, increasing truck weight and truck length is not sound transportation policy. And including a provision to increase double trailer size would also force 39 states to run 33-foot trailers, all the while the Department of Transportation is conducting a congressionally mandated truck size and weight study. What sense does that make? Now let me address the issue of driver hours of service and fatigue. Including provisions in an appropriations bill that would effectively continue the suspension of the use of the once-a-week 34-hour restart and the 2 consecutive 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. rest periods will only worsen driver fatigue, as some employers will push their drivers to work over 80 hours a week, which is actually twice what many of us will work in the average work week. The consecutive off-duty periods that I mentioned are designed to give drivers the opportunity to rest during their regular circadian rhythm, when studies have shown that sleep is most recuperative. And again, this is being promoted while DOT conducts a driver restart study. As we make the necessary investments and improvement in our infrastructure to build transportation capacity needed to compete in a global economy, we cannot afford to let highway safety become a second thought. These end-around attacks through the appropriations process are a bow to special interests at the expense of everyday people who share the roads and highways with commercial drivers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you very much, Lamont. I'd now like to introduce Officer Robert Mills, who is a 23-year law enforcement veteran, having spent 20 of those years with the Fort Worth Police Department in Texas. Officer Mills has over a decade of experience with commercial motor vehicle safety enforcement, including serving on the executive committee for the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, which is the National Association of Law Enforcement involved in motor carrier enforcement. And he also participates in the federal government's, the Department of Transportation's Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee. Officer Mills has tremendous experience, firsthand experience, and he believes passionately in making our roads safer for everyone and opposes many of the provisions that are being now considered in Congress. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Robert Mills, and like was said, I've been with the Fort Worth Police Department in Texas for 23 years, and 13 of those years I have been a commercial motor vehicle roadside inspector. I did serve at one time on the executive committee for the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, and as was said, I am a member of the Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee. So I have a great deal of knowledge and experience over the years as it pertains to traffic and truck safety, safety violations, fatigue drivers, and just the general dangers of heavy trucks. But on a more personal note, I'm also up here representing my 5-year-old son, who is the light of my life, and he is the reason that I get up every day and I enforce these regulations on our roads and our highways, because I want my son to be safe. And when I work these horrible crashes, my son is the first thing that I think of. I'm out on the highways every day, and I see the dangerous conditions that not only drivers of passenger vehicles, but truck drivers and law enforcement see every day. In my home state of Texas, 56% of our major roadways are in poor, mediocre, or even fair condition, and almost a fifth of our bridges are structurally deficient or functionally obsolete. Congress should be taking action to improve and not worsen our infrastructure. It shouldn't take a disaster like bridge collapses in Minneapolis or Washington State to spur their action. Yet despite those clear warning signs and our increasingly crumbling infrastructure, Congress is still pushing for longer, heavier trucks. While we don't know where the next disaster will happen, we do know that adding more length and more weight leads to more damage and more devastation. From a safety perspective, double 33-foot trailers, basically a disaster. By increasing 28-foot double trailers to 33-foot, there would be a 6-foot wider turning radius in the combination. There would also be larger blind spots, which will be a greater hazard to pedestrians, motorcyclists, motorists, bicyclists. Longer trucks are also a danger to law enforcement and highway workers, with the chance of being struck increasing due to what we call a kind of a crack the whip effect. And that happens when small changes in direction of the tractor are amplified by that last trailer. In the past 5 years, there have been more than 2,200 deaths involving large truck crashes in Texas. 2,200. Nationwide numbers are even more shocking. In the past 5 years, more than 18,000 people have been killed in large truck crashes, and another 500,000 injured. This appropriations bill is going to result in even more preventable death and destruction. I urge Congress to stop the tired trucker provision, the double 33 trailer provision, the underinsured truck provision, and all increases, any increases to size and weight. I ask Congress to stand up for law enforcement and stand up for the American families that travel on our roadways every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Mills. I'd now like to welcome Daphne Iser, who is co-founder of Parents Against Tired Truckers, or PAT. Daphne is a force in the truck safety movement. She has single-handedly influenced the debate in Congress and in states on the issue of tired truckers. Daphne is such a force that she's actually taken on her own members of Congress from Maine. She has participated with us on many, many of these issues. And I have to say that her son was killed in 1993, over 20 years ago. And I know, because she is a personal friend, that it never gets easier, and neither do the battles against the trucking industry in their efforts to repeal and roll back safety provisions. So I am very happy to have Daphne here. She has been a tremendous spokesperson on this issue, and she's also been recognized for her contributions. Last year, she was recognized as a White House Champion of Change given an award for her work on truck safety. And we're very grateful for her to fly down here today from Lisbon, Maine to join us. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Daphne Iser, and we founded Parents Against Tired Truckers, PAT. We founded PAT over 20 years ago after my son Jeff was killed in a truck crash. Jeff was in a car with his 4 friends when a Walmart truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and ran over the top of his parked car. All but one of the teenagers died. That day, that was a needless, tragic crash. It was October 10th, 1993. 5 families' lives were forever changed. Unfortunately, my story is not unique. Our country experiences the equivalent on our roads of a major airplane crash every week. Truck drivers are being pushed beyond physical and mental limits to work up to 82 hours a week. That's more than the average work week. And truck crash fatalities are on the rise. Yet, ignoring these sobering facts, Congress seems dead set on putting more tired truckers on the road. This will jeopardize their lives and the lives of our family members. Last year, I made this same trip to Washington from my hometown of Lisbon, Maine, to urge my own senator, Senator Susan Collins, to stop her egregious efforts to take away truck drivers' weekend off. My pleas were met by deaf ears, and the trucking industry notched another deadly victory in their lobbying efforts. Now, just 6 months later, the House funding bill essentially continues Senator Collins's deadly tired trucker experiment. I am not alone in opposing this deadly safety rollback. This issue received widespread public and media attention last summer when a limousine bus carrying comedian Tracy Morgan was hit by a Walmart truck driver who had fallen asleep at the wheel. James McNair, a fellow comedian, was killed, and Mr. Morgan was seriously injured. There were countless editorials all across the country highlighting the problem of tired trucker fatigue and opposing what Senator Collins and the trucking industry are doing. Every day, people are needlessly dying on our roads in horrific large truck crashes, and many of them involve tired truckers. In fact, about 4,000 people are killed every year. Most are not celebrities, whose deaths receive a lot of media coverage. They are parents who left home to go to work, or teens going on a college visit, like those killed and injured in the Orland, California FedEx crash, or student nurses returning from a fun weekend away, like those recently killed in Georgia, or maybe a child who went out with some friends for an autumn hayride, like my son Jeff. And he never made it home. This will happen over and over again until the trucking industry faces up to the problem and they advance responsible solutions instead of seeking repeal of important safety rules. The public understands this issue and is very concerned. Last October, a poll was conducted that showed 80% of Americans don't want Congress to increase the working and driving hours of truck drivers. Yet, despite that strong statement, Congress is moving ahead with a bill to allow overtired and overworked truckers behind the wheel of overlong and overweight trucks. This has to be stopped. I urge Senator Collins, the members of the House and Senate Appropriations Committees, and every single member of Congress to put families before the corporate profits of the trucking industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Daphne. Our last speaker is Joan Claybrook. Joan is chair of Citizens for Reliable and Safe Highways, or CRASH. She was responsible for setting up CRASH, which was the first truck safety advocacy group in Washington, D.C. She is the former administrator of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. She is president emeritus of Public Citizen, and she was a founding board member of my organization, Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. Her consumer and advocacy work and safety work has been extensive, and she has been widely recognized and praised by national organizations and educational institutions for her work and contributions. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you to all of you here participating today, particularly the families of people who have suffered this egregious loss. I'm here today to talk about an aggressive and astounding assault on truck safety being pushed at the highest levels of the trucking industry by CEOs such as Fred Smith of Federal Express, who has come to Congress to personally lobby, as well, of course, to give campaign contributions to those he visits. Today is payday for FedEx and other trucking interests. Unfortunately, American families will be paying with their lives and their wallets if this bill that we've discussed is passed. Tacking special interest riders onto a must-pass appropriations bill, which is what is happening, without any public review or input, is straight out of the corporate lobbyist playbook. I thought Congress eliminated so-called earmarks, but they seem to have survived for the rich corporations trying to overturn commonplace safety laws. Not one of these earmarks would survive public scrutiny. These alarming rollbacks on truck size and weights and truck driver hours of service and minimum truck insurance levels have not been subject to a single congressional hearing. They have not been subject to agency review with public input on safety analysis of the impacts on crashes, deaths, and injuries. This is a behind-the-scenes secret deal. The only document supporting the forcing of these double 33 trailers, which FedEx wants, on the American families, was paid for by FedEx and other trucking interests. And FedEx and other supporters will profit big time if this change is allowed to become law. The industry ignores the reality and estimates of the benefits that will come from these dangerous rigs on the premise that larger trucks will result in fewer trucks on the road. But this is a faulty and a phony hypothesis which history has never supported. The industry has said this year after year, and it's never come true. This industry-sponsored study is nothing but corporate junk science. This bill not only skirts the regular congressional process, it also ignores the views of the states. States are going to be forced to allow double 33 tractor trailers even if they don't want them. And right now, 39 states have laws saying that they don't want them. But watch out, because a big truck pulling 2 trailers the length of an 8-story office building is going to be driving next to you and your family at 65 or 70 or 75 miles an hour in the not too distant future if this bill becomes law. Or you may encounter one winding narrow 2-lane roads or in crowded streets during rush hour commute. Last March, an article on the multi-billion-dollar profits of FedEx included extensive quotes from Mr. Smith about congressional consideration of his plan to force the states to allow these double 33s and the active lobbying of FedEx. He claims incorrectly that the twin trailer proposal enjoys widespread support across the transportation spectrum. But he does not mention that the public who pays for and uses our roads strongly oppose his plan. So do truck drivers who are behind the wheel of these oversized rigs on highways and local roads. And so do some trucking companies, and so do railroad companies, and so do law enforcement officials who must deal with the consequences on the highway and inform families about the loss of their loved ones. And you've heard from some of the outstanding officials today. It doesn't matter to the congressional sponsors of these anti-safety provisions what the public wants or what the states want. The only thing that matters to them is what FedEx and other trucking industries want and how to deliver the benefits for them. Yet many states do object. The Mississippi Transportation Commission recently wrote a letter to Mississippi Senator Ted Cochran, who is chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, stating they don't want double 33s because it would, quote, endanger motorists, worsen our crumbling roads, and increase the fiscal burden shouldered by Mississippi taxpayers, end quote. Make no mistake, the FedEx proposal is all about increasing profits at the expense of public safety. And trucking revenue has increased substantially in the last 2 years, along with an increase in deaths. An increase in deaths of 17% in the last 4 years and 28% increase in injuries. But that doesn't matter to FedEx. They're looking at the bottom line. And yet the safety rollbacks don't stop there. There are several other anti-safety earmarks slipped into the bill. Idaho trucks will be allowed to weigh 129,000 pounds, more than 60% increase from our current federal limits of 80,000 pounds. And Kansas trucks could be as long as 100 feet, dwarfing not only passenger cars, but even other trucks. And tired truckers will continue to be on our roads. The bill essentially extends and expands the backdoor amendment demanded by Senator Susan Collins of Maine late last year, with no public hearings, a last-minute proposal on the appropriations bill to increase the weekly working and driving hours of a truck driver to 82 hours a week. And last but not least, the bill stops an open and public government rulemaking. Insurance minimums have not been increased for over 30 years for truck and passenger-carrying buses. That means that they don't even keep up with inflation. The current minimum requirements of $750,000 to cover everyone injured in any particular crash, that is injured, killed, property damage, the whole thing, it is grossly inadequate to cover the cost of the massive and often financially devastating cost of serious truck crashes. Rather than allow stakeholders to participate in rulemaking, which is going on at DOT right now, the industry wants to cut out the public by stopping any agency action. I cannot remember in the last 25 years a more industry-coordinated and comprehensive attack on motor carrier safety. We urge Congress to reject this bill and ask the Secretary of Transportation, Anthony Foxx, to recommend that President Obama veto any spending bill that includes anti-safety measures that will cause more deaths and injuries on our streets and highways. Families will be paying with their lives and their wallets if the trucking industry is successful. Thank you very much. And we'd be pleased to take questions.
Thank you, John. We're happy to take any questions if you want to identify yourself before you ask a question and tell me who you'd like to direct it to. We're also happy to do some individual interviews if you're interested in doing that. So afterwards, just come up and just ask whoever is behind me that you would like to speak with. And thank you very much for coming today. We really appreciate it. Thank you.